something very important for both designers and developers is to study human interface guidelines for the web, for Apple and Android platforms. It will make you a better designer and a better developer for sure.
Today we have Florian, who will talk about how he works with Storybook to make product development easier, faster, and more agile. So after Florian presents, you will have the floor for Q&A at the end. And with that, I'll hand the screen over to Florian.
Okay, so thank you for joining today. I will give you a comprehensive introduction on how to streamline your UI development process using Storybook. So first, my name is Florian Ludo. I'm a co-founder and CTO at Avention Inc. I'm born and raised in France. I spent 4 years in Japan, and I recently moved to Seoul in South Korea. I've been working with dev and design teams for more than 8 years, and you can contact me anytime, either on florianldt.com or on most social medias at florianldt. So who is this talk for? It's for designers. We will use Figma and we will talk about design principles. It's for front-end developers. There will be a bunch of code. And it's for team leaders and project managers, because I will put the emphasis into collaboration. And it's for everyone curious about design and development and everything in between. So before starting, every underlined text, images, and demo you will find in this talk have their links to their resources. So guys, you don't have to take any notes. Everything will be provided. Thanks to Creative Tokyo, the talk is also recorded and you will be able to check it later. All materials used is open source and will be provided for you to check on later. You can prepare your question for the Q&A session at the end of this talk. And we have a lot of things to cover in a very short time. So let's get going. And most importantly, and hopefully, enjoy the talk. So this is today's agenda. So we will go through from A to Z, what is Storybook, talking about design, how to prepare the design to be used in Storybook, how to implement Storybook, how to deploy, how to publish your component library, how to integrate your component library, and along the way, some best practices and tips that I find over the years. So first, what's Storybook? On here, nothing fancy. I'm just quoting what the Storybook team put on their website. Storybook is a front-end workshop for building UI components and pages in isolation. And so this is the base introduction. And throughout the talk, we will deep dive into what it really means. So why you should care? A Storybook allows you to use the component-driven development approach, meaning that you can develop your UI without applying your business logic, which make you iterate faster and allow a better communication between developers and designers. Storybooks became your component documentation, so all the documentation related to your component will take place in this Storybook. It's also a good place to involve all the stakeholders as soon as possible to reduce miscommunication and error along the way, and that as soon as possible. It also improves testing, and as we said before, it allows you to isolate the UI from the business logic, and in summary, allow you to iterate on your project quickly, and for businesses, save time and money. So first, prepare the design. So I know here a lot of you guys are UI UX designers, and you've probably heard about these atomic design principles. So for people who might not know about it, it has been introduced by Mr. Brad Frost in 2013. It's a methodology for creating design system, and in 2013 it had 5 distinct levels, but throughout the years a 6th level has been introduced. So here, a quick recap about those 6 levels that we will see in more detail. So we have first the design tokens up to the atom, up to the molecules, up to the organisms, up to the templates, and finally the pages. So in order to work through those levels in detail, I invite you to in the first demo on Figma. So let's jump to the Figma. Is the Figma available? Like, can you see the Figma? Okay, perfect. So a tool that you might be very familiar with for all the designer in the room. So first, starting with the first layer, the first level, so design tokens. So design tokens is where you represent everything from colors, from font sizes, spacing, and so on. So first, one thing that I just forgot to mention, and I prefer starting from here, is starting from what we will be building today, before the design tokens actually. So as explained just in the introduction of the event, Creative Tokyo has a job board, and I took this page because it is really a good choice to implement this page using a component approach. So I took that design from Creative Tokyo, simplified it a little to make it more accessible for this demo. So this is what we will be building. So a hero here, a header, a hero section, and two job list. This one with an optional button, and available for 2 breakpoints. So a smaller breakpoints for mobile and a larger one for laptop. So going back to tokens. So for this project, we will need those colors. So let me zoom here a little. So on your design, don't forget to add the name of your different components. So your developers will be first thing happy and will be able to iterate on the project way faster, because it takes a lot of time actually to find names. The naming is a very time-consuming step. So here I got the value of my colors. Same for the breakpoints, 3 breakpoints, mobile and up, tablet and up, laptop and up with the representation here for the breakpoint. Same for the elevations. So when some part of the UI is hovered or pressed, for example, you have the possibility to have multiple elevation types. Then moving one level up to the atoms. So this is where you have components that cannot be broken down even further. So here you will see typographies. We have the display typography, the heading, and you can notice here those red squared with the pixel value in here. So this is what I've learned from a fellow designer. It's a good practice to show those hidden paddings, so developers, they don't have to go down the hierarchy of your UI on Figma. They can see right away that you have top and bottom padding of 25 pixel. Other typographies, label, paragraph. Then a component here, an atom that has usually a lot of different variables, a button. So in our case, we have 3 different sizes: a small button, a medium button, and a large button. Each size can have different shapes: squared, rounded, and peel. And each shape has 3 different kinds: a primary kind, secondary kind, and a ghost kind. And also a couple of different states. So a normal state, a hover state, pressed, disabled, and loading. We also have to make this design badge atom, also a thumbnail atom with different shapes and sizes, and also a simple logo. Moving up to molecule now. So molecule are aggregation of multiple atoms. So here we have our header, available in two different breakpoints, less than desktop and up and desktop and up. And something that is has more meaning here, a job list item, so which is a composition of the thumbnail atom, a couple of typographies, two typographies, and also a badge here, available in different shapes and different states, so a hovered shape. Moving now to organism, so one level up. So we have here organisms. So organisms are sections of your design and also aggregation of multiple molecules. So here as a section, we have the hero section. So here available with some notes for developers, and a job list item with some comment that it's available in square, rounded, and pill shapes. So available in two different breakpoints, one for less than desktop and up. So we can see that we have the possibility to have this optional button in the bottom, and here one representation for developers to iterate faster, and also the second breakpoint when you have here two columns for desktop and up. So now moving to templates. So templates are the final page, your final, the composition of everything to compose your page. But in the case of templates, we use placeholders, either for text or either for images. So here we have the mobile version and the laptop desktop version using placeholders and those guides. And then moving back to what we talked earlier, pages. So pages are you take the templates and you apply a real situation data, so that the user might be able to see at a certain time. So let's see the end of the page. So with the bottom button here. So that's about it concerning the preparation of the design. So regarding this section, a couple of best practices and tips. So don't forget, easy to forget component states. For example, the disable state, the loading state, because if you forget them, your developers will let you know that you did, because they are easy to forget. It's in the name, so you might say, oh, it's not important, but in order to implement your UI, your components, you will need this information. Document your design as much as possible. So what I like to do is providing those red rectangles as guide with the pixel. So don't forget that Figma is a designer tool. So your developers might not be as familiar with the tool as you are. So try to leave them a lot of guidance. So they are, and it will also avoid as much cognitive overhead for developers during the handoff. So during the situation when you will give the design to your developers. And very important, involve all the stakeholders in your design process from the beginning throughout the design process. So for example, for startups, it's very important to iterate fast on a product. So talking to your developers right away and asking them, oh, is that easy to do? Is there an easier way to do it? This is how you get things done and in a quick fashion. So now that you prepared the design, it's time to implement Storybook. So here, the installation is fairly easy. So I'm just quoting what's on the website again. A couple of catch here. Storybook is available for Angular, React, Vue, and more. And in order to install Storybook, you first have to create your project. So in our case, for this presentation, we will use React. So first create the React project, and now you can run the command npx storybook init. And the reason is the command will first analyze what framework you are using, and then create all the necessary repository and configuration files in order for you to create your component library right away. So second demo, let's see how the Storybook looks like and how we ended up with this result. So is everyone able to see, or should I zoom a little? Okay. So first, I want to show you the final result, and then we will go through how we obtain that result. So first, I have here an introduction story. It's just a copy of the README of the project. Then I divided this storybook following the same atomic design principles, so it's easier for everyone to map the design to the storybook. So starting from the token, so we have here the breakpoints. So exactly as same as we presented inside the Figma file, the different colors, the different elevations. Moving to the atoms, we have the badges available in different kinds. So the primary, secondary. Moving to the buttons, here again, primary, the secondary buttons, the ghost button, the loading state, the disable state. Moving to the logo, here the simple logo, the thumbnail or different shapes, square, rounded, circle, and also our typographies that we shown earlier, display, heading, label, and paragraph. Then one step up, we have the molecules with our header and our job list item with different shapes, square, rounded, and peel. Then moving to organisms, we here find our hero section and our job list. And job list has a lot of different variation. We have the squared, the rounded, the peel, the odd. In case of we receive an odd number of job, we want to see how it will behave in that case. Also with the optional bottom button. And as I said earlier, an easy to forget state, the empty state. So in the case where we receive no job, how should we handle this in our UI? Then moving to the templates. So this is where we have the final result with our placeholders, and then with the real data, our page. So then I will go to one very common atom, the button, and dig a bit more about what Storybook allow us to do. So for every component, every stories, we have Storybook allow you to see what kind of properties you have on every component. So in the case of my button, I have here this onClick method, so the action, the disable state, which is a Boolean and with the false value as default, and a couple of other ones, shapes, sizes, Boolean if the button is loading, and so on. But for now, it's just read only. Moving to action, you have action tab here in the bottom panel, where you can actually, every time you click on the component, you can see the event received right on Storybook. You also have an accessibility tab, which is great. So you can see if your component is passing or violating accessibility rules. So in the case of the button, everything is fine, but I know that if I move to the job list item here, I got a rule violation regarding this bit of text here when you see the Creative Tokyo telling me that the color contrast is not good. And if I want to comply with all the rules, I can fix that. So it's nice to see this directly in Storybook instead of actually doing it later in the process. I think one cool thing that designer will like is the ability to embed Figma designs right on Storybook. So your stakeholders will not have to go back and forth. The Figma file and the Storybook, everything is in one place. So here, regarding the buttons, we have the button Figma file. We have also the medium, and this is directly tied to it, directly in sync with your Figma file, which is nice. Moving up to the panel beside at the right of the Canva, we have here a more structured documentation. Of course, you can add more text, add readmes to add more documentation and more description on your component. And you can also write on Storybook, be able to toggle dark mode and light mode. I don't handle it in this demo, but this is something you can do. You have the possibility to see your design using different viewports. So in order for this to make sense, I will directly move to a section here. So on this section, I can toggle different viewport. So for example, how my page will look like on the iPhone 14 Pro, and see if the responsiveness of the implementation of my component library is well made. Then we can toggle also the iPod Pro and also the MacBook Air, and we see that we started from one section list to two sections, so everything is working accordingly. Then we also have the possibility, and this is something quite interesting, to see how certain user might being able to consult, to preview your design. So I have glasses, so there is a way for you to toggle blurred vision, and you will see how people will see your pages if they have my condition and they take their glasses off, or other things that other condition that might make people see colors differently. In my case, I'm using a lot of grayscale, so it's not a problem. But you can see that logos in some companies, they appear different. So this is something that you can try directly in Storybook. And another cool part, so I shown that a lot of static here, a lot of static stories, but I also like to provide a sandbox story where all stakeholders have the possibility to play with the component. So in this case, I can modify what's inside the component, change the text, and it's reflected over here. Also trigger different states, the disable state, how it looks like, the is loading state, different kind and sizes. So stakeholders, they can mix what they want and try everything here. And so this is how it looks like. Now let's see a bit of code and see how you can obtain this result. So once you installed the Storybook, you have this .storybook folder. This is where you see your the main configuration, where you specify where your stories are located, and a couple of add-ons you can add to enhance Storybook. On this preview, this is where it's not given by default, but this is where I give custom viewport, and if you have other viewport, you can add them. So this is where when we tested the responsiveness, this is where you can provide more previews. And in the case, I will just go through one of the component. So in my case, I'm using a style component for people who know what is it. So given different, those are the types, so those are the different props that my button might be able to play with. So the disabled Boolean, the kind, as we talked earlier, on the design and on the Storybook, shapes, sizes, and based on those properties, I'm writing some CSS code depending on every case. So in the primary kind, secondary kind, you use this kind of themed colors. Same for the sizes, different value depending on different sizes. Same for the shapes. And those are the root style, so shared style among the component. Then here we have the button component, how it looks like in code. So it's very simple. It's a normal button with some props, the kind props, and so on. And if we go to something that Storybook will be reading, so those are called stories. And what you can do here is providing a title, which component you are displaying in that story, common props, common properties. This is where I'm saying that the different Figma file that we show on the preview before. And what I like to do is, as I said before, providing some static stories. So with all my shapes, all my different sizes, looping through those properties. And the last one, which was the more interesting one, the sandbox. So to create a sandbox, you first create a template with your arguments. Then you bind this template with arguments like this. And what Storybook will understand is it will understand that you want to play with those properties. So this is why on the bottom panel, you were able to toggle and change different properties. And that's it on the code side. So everything will be provided. So we have very short amount of time, but you can always ask question and see all the repositories later on. So going back to the slides, key takeaways here. So provide static and sandbox stories. It's a very interesting way for all your stakeholders to preview your component. Document your storybook as much as possible. Test accessibility right into your stories. Don't wait the end of the project to test everything. Use the Storybook add-on design to embed Figma previews right into your storybook. And if you know about Storybook, you might have seen that other companies might not implement templates. You might not see templates and pages in their storybooks because it don't suit every project. There is a line when you cross the line of templates, you might be tempted to add business logic at that point, and in many cases it's fair. So in that case, but I wanted to show you that it was actually possible to put everything on Storybook and just, but it might not suit every project. And again, involve stakeholders as much as possible, project manager, everyone, to avoid miscommunication and implement the Storybook in a nice fashion. So now that we have our Storybook implemented, it's time for the deployment. We have the possibility to choose among a lot of providers. Chromatic, which is the same team who made Storybook. You also have the ability to publish to GitHub Pages, AWS3, and a lot more providers. We will choose Chromatic because it's very easy to set up. You have the possibility to have public or private storybooks. All your storybooks will be in one place. There is nice Git style review and merge system for your UI. It's very great for collaboration, and it allows you to use regression testing. So to deploy on Chromatic, it's very easy. You install the dependency with the dev dependency with npm install chromatic-save-dev. You go create an account on Chromatic. They will give you your project token, and you can simply deploy using npm chromatic-project-token with the token. Press enter, and everything is on Chromatic. So let's see quickly how it will look like. So here I'm on Chromatic on the project. We will go to build 1 because the build 2 is some bug fix, so there is nothing very interesting here. So because it's the first deployment, I can see all my different stories, and the more you deploy, the more. And when you have component changes, you will be able to have a split view between the the previous component and the new one. And you have also have the ability to add comment and communicate with your stakeholders on those components. And the part that we are interested in is the library. So this is where you can find all your different components. And over here you have this view storybook. And this is where you will find the exact same storybook that we had on localhost, but now it is on the web. So you can take that link and share it with your peers. And quickly in the Manage tab, something that I want to talk about, it's because by default, storybooks are private. So if you want to share them to the world, don't forget to toggle this this value here. So going back to the best practices and tips around the deployment, storybooks are private by default. Don't forget to toggle. You have 5,000 free snapshots per month. If you need more, you will have to upgrade to the pay plan. It's important to sync your Chromatic project with the GitHub repo, so everything, code and Storybook, is in sync, and use continuous integration. Normally, you don't push manually. It's part of your continuous integration pipeline. Every time you merge some code in the master branch, for example, or anything, it will automatically deploy to Chromatic. So now that we get the Storybook uploaded, it's time to publish the library. So in our case, I want to share this library to everyone. So I decided to build a public library. I'm using a combination of Rollup.js, which is a JavaScript bundler, and I'm deploying on the Node package manager. So Rollup is using this configuration file very quickly. What it allows me, because I'm using TypeScript, it allows me to transpile TypeScript code into JavaScript code. So I'm explaining in this configuration that I want to transpile in both CommonJS and ES module formats. And what is interesting here is the last external array is as React and style component, because those two libraries are peer dependency, meaning that it's the role of the consumer to install those dependency, and we are not bundling them with our library. You log into npm in the terminal. You just run npm publish, and we have our component library up and running on the web and available for everyone to download. Best practices here. You should ask you the question, should you really publish the component library? Is it really a necessity? There is other options. If yes, do you want to publish a public or a private library? Is it something that you want to share with the world like we are doing today, or is it something close to your organization? I recommend you to build a library using TypeScript or provide types for developer experience and your consumers. Document your library, write tests, and provide code coverage, and also use a changelog to keep track of changes. So your consumer, they will know if breaking changes are impacting them or not. And quickly the introduction. So now that it's ready on npm, we can just run npm install tk creative kit, which is the name of our library, and style component. Same for yarn, and we here have a quick screenshot about how to integrate our button. Don't worry, everything is open source, and you can see the integration repo on GitHub. And one best practices here when testing integration is to use npm link x being the name of your library, or npm install with the local path, so you don't have to actually upload to npm and download to npm. It will save you a lot of time. Final key takeaways. Something very important for both designers and developers is to study human interface guidelines for the web, for Apple and Android platforms. It will make you a better designer and a better developer for sure. Onboard and communicate with stakeholders early on and throughout the whole project. The Storybook is a living document, so you might start very small with one component, but it will grow and have like many components, molecules, and even pages if it suits the project. The goal of this project is for you to think that, okay, Storybook is great, and for every new project, you should start using it, and it will definitely pay dividends. Or if you already have an existing project, you can start gradually adopting it, starting with one component and then covering all of them in some time. and study top company storybooks. The one that we've been building today is rather small, and there are way larger ones out there. And again, get your hands dirty. It's not that complex. Start small, one component, and it will pay dividend again. So to learn more here, I'm just posting all the resources that you guys can check later. Everything is open source. The Figma file, you can check it. The component library, the Storybook repo, and the slides are also available on the GitHub link. The Storybook preview, you can check that out. The NPM package, you can check it, you can use it. Feel free to do so. The integration repo, and a couple of other inspiration from big companies, SAP, Microsoft, the IBM Carbon, the Uber base. Those guys, they are not using the Uber base. They are not using Storybook, but the design library is awesome. Link to the atomic design methodology for you to check more. And Storybook is not the only one. There are alternatives: Pattern Lab, React Cosmos, or Ladle, for instance. But Storybook is the most popular. So yeah, thanks a lot, and feel free to ask any question.
All right. Thank you so much, Florian, for a very insightful sharing. So yeah, if anyone wants to ask Florian questions, feel free to raise your hand and Mike will help you unmute and you can ask question to Florian directly. If you prefer to type in the chat, that also works, and I can help you collect your question to Florian. Okay, Brett has a question. Can you unmute him, Mike?
I actually don't have a question, but I was just going to say it's very, very well done. It's very verbose. You have everything you need there, and it's a very good example and starting point for this kind of thing. There's a lot of little things that I hadn't ever heard before or noticed, and I don't know, you just did a really good job. So I just want to say well done. And like, this seems like a great starting point for anyone who's using this kind of thing. So yeah, really nice.
Yeah, that was the objective. So thank you for the feedback.
I mean, it like, because the naming is specific to this event, or, you know, it's kind of like generic in a way. I would maybe try branding it as something that might be like kind of, I don't know if you're familiar with like, well, like Ruby on Rails for Rails, or like Vulkan for React, and like a kind of kit basically in a way to start your own Storybook library.
Yeah.
Like that naming, if you change it a little bit, I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe the naming's good. It's just a little specific that people who are not here might not, you know what I mean? Know like, oh, this is what I should start a design kit with, design system with.
Yeah, that was the objective, to have something from A to Z. So I don't know if I'm missing some points here, but I got a lot of covered. So,
or maybe you could make like a tool where like you could do your own naming, but basically spit out the package that you have all this stuff with whatever custom naming that you put in, kind of like white labeling or something like that. And then people could start building with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Yeah, so I had a question. You know, coming from the designer side, you know, maybe the last quarter about the development deployment, but that kind of went over my head. But when I work with a developer that handles that, you know, is it as easy as me just updating my Figma file, and then, you know, the developer can import that quickly to update any changes that I make, as long as it's organized the way you had it in the Figma file? Is that all the designer would need to do?
I would say it's never that easy. I mean, I don't believe there is even with all the fuss about ChatGPT and everything related. I don't believe something exists where you just you just even some any Figma plugin where you just design and you click one button and then you have the storybook. If this exists, then we are pretty much jobless at the point. But
Okay.
but yeah, once you make the update, as long as you keep something like, if you provide the name of your component, if you document it, if you put all the value, you will reduce the cognitive overhead. So pretty much all the job is done here, because as a developer, I kind of have both cap. So I design a bit, I code a bit also. So
So
coming
for any-
And
from
that's really the difference, I think, because, you know, usually in my experience, designers aren't capable like of making something like this in Storybook, and developers are often not capable of doing the design aspects of the front end. And like I mean, to be honest, I was a little confused whether you were a designer or a developer. I can clearly see now you are a developer and maybe also a designer. But I think that's a very special, like, you know, not a space to be in that not many people are in. So yeah, Mike, I think Mike's right. Like, how do you narrow that, you know, between the designer and the developer? I personally like do both. So I haven't worked I haven't worked with someone who I like have this matching with. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, and that's what I'm trying to, like, over the years, trying to like put a lot of effort to solve. Is in a lot of companies I'm seeing kind of a wall between design and development, and this is what I'm trying to break. And what I didn't put it on the final takeaways, but maybe for sake of space, but I had it in mind at some point. And what I wanted to say is, if you are the best way to break that wall is, if you are a designer, try coding. It's as simple as that. But you are the one who make the design something and try to code it. And if you have some trouble, ask your developers or ask some people you know that know how to develop, and try to put you in their shoes. What are the problems? And I've seen this throughout the years. I've seen that at the end of this exercise, designers were like, it was just a drag and drop on Figma, but actually coding it's like a week or 2 weeks. And and it's also appear on the flip side, like something that you thought was complicated to design is actually pretty trivial to code. So I would always recommend, like, I've heard this name in the past. In the past, people who can both develop and design, they are called like the
Many
developer
different names.
unicorn, something like that.
Yeah.
So the best way to become that is, if you are a designer, try to code your design, and if you are a developer, try to start the design, and you will see it's not that easy. You know, as a developer, we are also like, designer, you just drag and drop stuff, but it's not easy. So respect the work of the other side and understand how it is. What's the process?
I would also add that probably, like, especially in certain size companies, someone who is a hybrid role, like, would be valuable to have, because they can help bridge this gap for both sides, you know? And I mean, I came from the design side. And so, like, if I'm doing something, I tend to have a little bit of drift in the stuff that I'm doing, but like, I can see your overall level of organization is like really nice and really well done, that it almost doesn't let you have any drift, because if you do, you have to update up all these things. So that's really attractive. I think that's why you've done such a good job in this.
And I think that's having the experience in both world, like, and I feel when I see some designs sometime, I can feel if the designer is also a developer, because the way I design, because my main thing is development. The way I design is very logical. It's not creative.
Yeah.
I cannot be
Yeah.
creative, but all my design is very logical because I already know how to implement it. So I do design from the other side,
Yeah. I understand definitely. It's interesting. It's really interesting.
All right, cool.
I mean, what do you think about, like, to me, I think it's crazy that we make buttons over and over and over again when it's like really the same thing, like I kind of feel like buttons could be one library and then just import it into every Figma project, import it into every, React project. Like, especially doing something like this, when you start a new project, you must you start with this as a base because you already have it, right? You're not going to go and remake all those buttons again. Irina has a question. So let her go.
Yeah, you can finish your thought, and I will ask.
I'm just chatting.
Just
not really asking
to
questions.
answer that. Then, you also have tools to help you to do that, like framework, like material UI, for example.
I help maintain RMWC, which is wraps React Material Web. It's React Material Web Components. It wraps Google's Material Web Components, so it's like a direct competitor of this, but it's not used at all. So you should help us out. Where it's good. It's good.
You have a lot of component libraries already that you can leverage and customize. But what I've seen is like it depends what kind of company you are. Are you a company that working with clients? And I've seen that for those companies, they often have their own library, and when they work with the client, they don't start from zero. They have what is called like skeleton companies, component which have no UI, no colors, no UI whatsoever, just the bare components with the functionalities. And when they start with a new client, they apply their design style, their colors, and so on. But if you work for like one company that is making their own service, they will spend a lot of time building on this component library because they will reuse it. Same for Uber, for example. They have their own library that is open to everyone, and they use it for like the riding app, the user app, the driver app, Uber Eats. They use the same component. So once they do it, they can reuse everything. Same they use it for web and for their mobile apps as well. It's using the same the same library.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, Irina, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's like the right place to ask, but maybe you can help me. It's more like advice. So, and will this be posted somewhere publicly, the video?
The video is it's recorded. So Creative Tokyo, the team here will release this for this talk and every resources, every repo, everything. I'm just posting the link here. Is it working? You might have to copy and paste.
Because I will be like more like in my question, I will not use specific names then. So how do you get on board actually with this a designer? So in one of the teams I work with, like I come first from the coding bootcamp and then I learned UX. So I think I have a very similar approach like you. I think like how will this be implemented? But in one of the teams that I work with, the person comes from like art school, artistic background. How do you, I don't know, and just simple like demonstration of how like components benefit everything doesn't really help? Do you have any like other ideas how to onboard creative person to use system?
I mean, I totally understand when you're talking about some people in the UI side coming from a creative, like an art background. I know what is it, and I know that our like both worlds are very different, and especially like the art style is completely the opposite. You know, those person in the engineering eye, they have close to no logic, and in their eyes, we have like no creativity. So the friction is happening, and it will happen, no doubt. But I would say, it might. When you see the benefit of having a component library, I think it might come from upper management, because they will be the ones seeing that you will save a lot of money or a lot of time, because development is faster and changes are faster as well. So it's not always good when the changes are coming from upper management. I have to say, but yeah, it should be about communication. That's a very tricky question. It's a valid one that I had to also answer.
Yeah, but I think you gave me the direction. Yes, the like faster and cheaper to implement the changes. Yeah, I think.
And yeah, it's you need a common ground. You know, it in the beginning you might not agree on every point, but I'm sure on some of them both of you guys will say, oh, you know, they're all you are giving the proof, so there is nothing to deny there.
If I can just add one thing, like if the person's just completely doing like Figma UI design, then maybe Storybook itself might not be that attractive to them. But definitely in Figma, you're making these different states and buttons and things like that. When you go to code that in the website with Storybook, you don't need any of the logic there. You can basically make dummy logic, so you can like add states very quickly and very easily. And if someone is doing that and they're not so much of a like a developer, but they want to make the buttons in like CSS and HTML or whatever, they can play around a lot easier than they can in a real project.
Yeah.
So that's like one of the most attractive parts of it.
Yeah.
So I would encourage them to just play around with it if that were me in that case.
Or even do pair programming, you know.
Yeah.
You showing them, oh, let's make that button together, and going like that. And yeah, I was also thinking Storybook is really well made for real project. And by real project, what I mean is I'm not talking about any dribble design, you know, something that you design and you post on Dribble and that's it. It's something that you will publish and people will use, and you will iterate on your project, on your component library. So it's not for short time project. It's for something that you will work on for many years. So it's an investment that you are making for the future. The more people you might start with, like 2 people in a company, and you might think, oh, but we don't need Storybook, we are only 2, it's fine. But if you are 50 people, this is where dividend will pay, because the more people you will onboard, the easier it will be, and this is where you will save a lot of money and time.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for a very interactive Q&A session. I feel like we can go on for another hour. But yeah, I think it's about time that we wrap up. But for sure, if you have any other questions, definitely, Florian, is it okay if everyone reach out to you?
Yeah, especially on the chat, I'm seeing some code that's a bit tricky to solve here in real time, but I'm interested to hear about the problem.
What would be the best way for everyone to reach out to you? Is LinkedIn or on Creative Tokyo Slack okay?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, Creative Tokyo on the Slack. I'm there, or on LinkedIn.
Great. So yeah, we will compose all of your contact information and share on the Slack. Even the video for today, after we publish it, we will upload it there. So everyone make sure to join our Creative Tokyo Slack community. Great. So with that being said, let me close up for today. Thank you all for coming.